Coffee Squad. We've got a special guest here today with us, Bryan. Bryan connected through Ray, and we're going to talk about workplace violence. So Bryan is a guru with that, works for a major company and some other companies with their cyber security, corporate security program. So definitely can't wait to jump into that subject. We're going to, always talk about what we're drinking today, and then we'll introduce Bryan a little more, and then we'll jump into the topic of the week. So a little bit about Bryan. Bryan did ROTC at Boston College, worked in the Army as an MI, military intelligence officer. And then he completed some work at Penn State, got his master's degree there in Homeland Security and Geospatial Intelligence. So again, already blows Will and I out of the water, way smarter than both of us, but that's why we have these guys on the show, right? So, and like I said, 12 years of IT, corporate security, and protective intelligence. So, Bryan, thanks for jumping on the show with us today. Really, really appreciate it. He's coming to us from the West Coast, some of my old stomping ground, so it's good to have that little chat about what's going on out there. So again, Bryan, thanks for jumping in. Will,
thanks very much for having me, guys.
Yeah. Anytime, man.
So Bryan, do you consider yourself a what is it, a golden eagle or a Nittany Lion?
It's an eagle through and through. Okay. You form those foundations when you're young. And I was not so young.
You are.
Going
that's right. You are from the area, right? So you are from that area. So yeah. Okay.
Eagle through and through. There's even a high school, Boston College High School out there that I went to. So, the Jesuits did something right for me.
Yeah. One of my favorite quarterbacks is from Boston College.
Who's that?
Matt Hasselbeck.
Okay.
All right. I was gonna say, please don't say Matt Ryan right now, man.
No. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Matt Ryan's on my fantasy team right now. Last week he had a horrible week, but every other week he's crushed it. As far as fantasy points goes.
The way I see it is Matt Ryan seems like a great guy, very good quarterback. Never gonna win you a championship, brother.
He just doesn't have the it factor. I mean, he's a great quarterback. But his team's not good enough to kind of, I think, replace that it factor.
Well, they're struggling. Nope. But it's hard. So
Nick Mullins has. Oh, I mean, never mind.
I love sports. Anyone who knows me, I love sports. And so these last few years, just with work and stuff, really since I joined the military, it's been hard to follow sports because you're so focused on doing other things. But my brother does a fantasy league every year, so I'm part of that. And so that kind of brings me into getting back into sports. So definitely enjoy it. But Matt Ryan, he's not a bad quarterback, man. He just needs better talent.
Not bad.
He's got a great offense. His defense is just,
football's, in my opinion, one of the greatest team sports there is. So.
Well, there's so much that can go, one guy doesn't do his job, the whole play is busted. And, and when you get 11 folks trying to do that all at the same time, to be that good is, you got so many people communicating, you got so many people kind of trusting each other. So it really is.
Yeah. So we were talking, Bryan and I and Will were kind of talking just a little bit before the show kicked off. So Bryan is connected through Ray, who's been on the show quite a bit, and they were part of Operation Supply Drop, which pretty cool little organization doing video games to troops out there and little goodie bags and that kind of stuff. So I was asking Bryan, hey, I am not a video gamer. And so Bryan, what's your favorite video game? Kind of tell us about your little video game hobbies. Hobby, right?
I would call it maybe part-time hobby. When I got out of the Army, it was due to injury, and so it wasn't exactly a by choice thing. And so I had kind of hit some rough spots. And so just one thing that I was able to find to really reconnect with folks was video games. And it wasn't like I was that huge of a video game player, but I could connect on, for me, NHL series games, those some of the best games you can get out there. I still remember, NHL 94, on a Sega Genesis, like playing with friends in like middle school, something like that. Like, so I'm big into sports games. Some of it's gotten maybe a little bit too technical. I think once Madden started putting that like QB vision thing into the game, like that's like, man, that is okay. I got to control a guy's eyeballs. That's cool.
I mean, it went from like what, like a handful of buttons, right? Like you had an A and B button, up, down, left, and right. As you know, I'm
techno ball, just throw it to Bo.
And now it's like, you got like 12 different buttons, and like you're saying, there's so many different controlling things. It's crazy because I'm not a video gamer. We had that discussion a little bit. Like I do like playing some of the college stuff. I actually have like 2 systems here in my house that I haven't played in years. I bought them through my surgeries and everything else while I was in the military, thinking I'd play them and never did. And I was having a conversation with Ray this week about, I have 3 little boys. He has a son now in college, and he uses video games kind of connect with his kid through deployments and stuff, which I think, hey, what a great tool. And that's Operation Supply Drop kind of is that connection thing too that does that. And so we're having that conversation of how young is too young with a video game, how much time, that kind of stuff. So Ray is a video gamer, like a nerd video gamer.
He is very much into it, and
which is great.
Yeah. Whatever I think you can do to bring a little levity to especially in the fields that we do work in, like some place where you can, one, take a break, and 2, kind of be able to connect with folks. And that was kind of the big thing for me. Was getting back in touch with folks either I hadn't talked to before or folks I hadn't talked to in forever. Video games do bring out a very level playing field and something you guys can engage with at the same time. And so, I think we've rightfully gone past like the, oh man, let's equate, Xbox to, I don't know, Magic, the card game or whatever. Not to knock Magic, but
I want to talk about like, getting out of the Army and that transition. Will did some years in the Army. I medically retired from the Army, and that unknown, that certain period, of going through, for our veteran listeners out there, and even if you're not a veteran listener, if you own a business or you see a veteran, like I think what I call it is like an identity crisis. Here you were at whatever you did in the military, and it was your life. I mean, most, like my life started about 4:45, 5 a.m. every single morning. Went and worked out for a few hours, and then I was at work till whoever knows whenever it finished. Sometimes we had early days, sometimes it was long, super long days, and then you deploy with your guys. And when that goes away, whether you retire because your time's up, or you get injured or medically retired, or you just decide, hey, this isn't for me, I'm going to move on to, I think, a little bit of that identity. I know I went through an identity crisis, so I think that's we'll kind of talk about that and what led you to the profession that you went in. I think for me and Will, we can kind of have that little discussion as well. So I was almost say it as well, and then Will, what are you drinking? But kind of got a little tongue twist going on there. So Will, what are you drinking today?
So I've got 2 cups going. I actually went to the gym today and spent like an hour on the bike and stuff, sweating. So I'm trying to rehydrate. So I've got a liquid IV. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
Just bought some for the paddle, man.
So you know it, yeah. So I'm drinking some liquid IV. I'm drinking their guava, which I actually really enjoy. So it's pretty good. Then I've also got my my good old standby coffee. I'm drinking a light roast, Guatemalan Ayarza from our local roastery here. I get my beans from, so it's a nice little kind of fruity, floral notes. It's really good. So I enjoy it. Jake, I can ask you what kind of goofy water are you drinking? Some carbonated water and something else?
Oh,
sure.
it, man. So. Bryan, just so you know, I don't drink coffee, so it's kind of funny. The name of the thing, it's called the Coffee Squad. But so today,
buck the trend, man.
Hey, you always gotta have one person, right? Like,
yep.
When I think Will and Ray think it's hilarious. You know, like, hey, we're gonna call it the Coffee Squad, and Jake doesn't drink coffee, so it's great. So Will and I always have like this little banter every single week, and our listeners.
I
Who are
had
with us,
already come up with the name prior to knowing Jake, so
yeah, you know, market research
I
there
didn't
just
know he
wasn't
didn't
there. You
drink.
know, Will, you didn't do your
Yeah.
due diligence.
well,
You know.
Ray said it was good. He vouched for you, so
But so what am I drinking? I got, you know, my typical little fancy LaCroix coconut water here. I'm drinking water as well, you know, typical, but Tailwind. Have you guys ever heard of Tailwind? It's like an endurance fuel powder.
okay.
Again, I've been paddling my butt off, getting ready to do the Catalina to Huntington Beach paddle, 32 miles. So
I used to do
that's
a lot of
awesome.
UCAN. You ever tried the UCAN?
yeah,
So,
yeah. So Tailwind's
what are
pretty
you
good.
drinking this morning, Brian?
So I think I'm bringing together both worlds. I will act as the neutral ground here.
It's a bridge.
So I do have a lovely can of Waterloo
Oh,
black
delicious.
cherry.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And it's my kind of go-to to try and keep me off soda. And then because it was slightly encouraged to have some coffee today, I have what, as far as I'm concerned, is the only coffee, which is Dunkin' Donuts. So it tastes like a Dunkin' Donuts. It has hints of Dunkin' Donuts, and that's all I really need in a coffee is Dunkin' Donuts.
Dunkin'
So-
Donuts.
Out there, I know there's a ton. I mean, everywhere in the U.S., you know, this coffee craze has been going on for years.
Yeah.
You know, started I think Starbucks, you know, and then Dunkin' D got in with it, and some of the other bigger name places. But there's a lot of like smaller coffee shops. I know in the area I live, there's a handful of them. So, Brian, are you a coffee connoisseur, or do you just like, hey, I know what I like, I don't care, I'm going to Dunkin' D's and that's it?
Yeah, it's I think I'm a big proponent of hey, support your local shops and whatnot, and so I will go in and grab a wonderful muffin or something like that, But when it comes down to it, as far as coffee, it is I know what I like, don't want to mess around with. I want a consistency that I anytime I go in there, I know what I'm getting. Creature of habit, and so I think there's a ton of places out here, and props to them. I hope they do well.
Yeah.
But Duncan is gonna get me every time.
Gotcha. So you're not like Will, like who goes up to the counter. I can only imagine Will going to the counter. So today I'm looking for like a light floral blend with a hint of nuttiness, maybe a little spice kick to it. What do you recommend? You're not that guy, huh?
I don't do that, Jake. Most of the time I ask for a pour over, and nobody knows what that is, but unless you're into coffee.
Brian, do you know what a pour over is?
If I think I've hung out with my wife long enough to figure some of this stuff out. Is that like the fancy carafe kind of thing that goes
Yeah,
right
I
into
think
the
they call
cup?
it Chemex or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what it's called.
Yeah,
Slowly
I'm learning
pour it
things.
over, and it
I'm
aerates.
gonna-
You get less acidity, more flavor oils.
Oh,
I'm making
man.
sure
if
that
I
my
drank
wife
coffee,
listens to
Will,
this
you and I would
episode.
hang out a lot more.
Just,
I just enjoy some things I enjoy in life, so I
Yeah.
I gotta enjoy.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if we're talking brisket right now, like, I'm doing a brisket. I'm smoking a
Oh.
brisket tonight or tomorrow. So
that hurts my heart right now because yes, in California you can get amazing coffee kind of anywhere. You can not for the life of me find a good barbecue place or a good wings place, and it
No.
hurts.
But like a bunch of buddies came out from California for a buddy's wedding this week, and the food where I live, right? Like, man, this southern food is phenomenal. I'm like, yeah, well, everything's good fried, man. Like, fried mac and cheese, fried chicken, fried this, fried that. Like,
Bunch of butter and fries.
yeah, it's delicious. Don't get me wrong. I'm like, but tell me how you feel afterwards. So after dinner last night, everyone was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I just ate a cinder block. Delicious, but it's so heavy. We're California. What we don't have out here, like, I think North Carolina has, or maybe it's just East Coast, the worst Mexican food you can ever find. Like, I'd rather go to Taco Bell than go to most of these homemade Mexican restaurants. I would say the Italian food out here, it's so hit and miss. Again, I just live in a tiny little like golf resort town, and it's mainly a bunch of retirees. So I think the restaurants cater to like the no salt. You know, they don't have taste buds anyways, or they're all probably losing them, so they don't have to really cook a whole lot. But it's not good here. But brisket is, brisket is my coffee. So yeah, that's
So what kind of wood are you smoking it on?
I am actually just using charcoal. I have the big green egg,
okay.
and so,
Gotcha.
but I do have cherry chips. I have all the mesquite flavored chips, the apple
I
chips.
do like a
all
cherry
that.
apple blend when I do my brisket.
So I'll do like a cherry apple mesquite blend.
Yeah.
And then, of course, like a little pan of water and apple cider vinegar underneath, and then a spritzer of the apple cider vinegar. And then I just do like a salt and pepper and a light garlic rub on there with mustard, like yellow mustard. So there's a famous place in Austin, Texas, Austin, called Franklin's Barbecue. So I usually go with either Franklin's Barbecue or Salt Lick Barbecue. They're two recipes, and as long as I'm not too screwed up, it's a pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So do you think? Are you
Can
biased?
you tell it's almost lunchtime here?
Yeah. Can you tell me? Do you think like the Carolina barbecue is better than like Texas barbecue? Or
I hate
like,
Carolina barbecue. I hate vinegar-based
It's
barbecue
different.
sauce.
Oh no!
Absolutely hate
See
it.
now, I gotta disagree.
I
with
like
you
a
on
dry
that,
rub
so.
or like a good like tomato based.
I think it all has a place. It all has a place. It's all good if you get the right one, except the Alabama white sauce. I haven't really found one where I'm just like, I'm not a big fan of the Alabama white sauce.
If you guys are fans, there's actually a map. It's called the Barbecue Map of the South. And so when I was driving from North Carolina to Texas for some legwork to be done, I drove, and it took me 2.5 days to get down to San Antonio. But that's because, like, the route I took, I literally would go an hour or two off the highway to go find some of these barbecue restaurants. And when I was in Texas, I think Texas has some of the best barbecue. Mississippi.
Dallas alone is where I've spent some time, and Pecan Lodge.
Oh yeah, phenomenal.
He's the best I've ever had.
Yeah, they're really good. They're in downtown Dallas there. So whenever I go out, we have a client out there I do work for, so that's a spot like I always go to. Yep. And there's a Mexican restaurant there called Gloria's. So as long as I go to those two spots when I'm out there, I'm good. So we've turned this from a security podcast to a coffee, food and coffee, which I absolutely love. I could talk about food all day. So, normally we talk about the news and kind of what's going on, but let's just kind of jump into the subject. I mean, let's talk about like workplace violence, and I guess Bryan, like your transition right from the Army into the career field that you do now. It'd be interesting to how'd you make that leap? Was it a hard leap? Does it just kind of make sense? So if you don't mind just kind of talking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a little bit of a wandering path, honestly. So I when I first got out of the military, I started into, I feel like, what every other officer falls into, which is project management. And I realized like it was for mortgage modification type of stuff. And so it wasn't exactly the most exciting or fulfilling part of a career. And so that's why I went back to Penn State and went into the Homeland Security program and the Geospatial Intelligence program, just to see, hey, how can I still serve my community in a, non-military role, or even like start looking into the private sector and the critical infrastructure aspects of the country. And so that's really how it all ended up happening. And then next thing I know, graduation date hits, and I'm like, well, crud, what am I going to do next? I literally bought I want to say 4 or 5 like suits, because I was like, well, with a Homeland Security degree, I am gonna end up in some government agency, and I will be wearing a suit and tie for the rest of my life. Like, might as well start. But then almost right away, I had my first kind of client reach out, and they were setting up a tactical intelligence type of program for their GSOC, their Global Security Operations Center, and it really just kind of took from there. So it was a little wandering, but it was still under that idea of hey, how can I serve my community? How can I do something for a lot of people or a lot for some people? I've been pretty lucky to have had the opportunities out here in California that I don't think you get a lot of places. I think a lot of companies, and especially in like the tech area, start to are growing up a bit, if you will, and really starting to see like, hey, this isn't just a frat house kind of atmosphere that you see in the Social Network movie and whatnot. Things are, you go back 4 years, and I think it's 4 years now, the YouTube shooting, and a lot of companies were like, that was kind of their wake up moment. And I've just been lucky enough to kind of come in with some experience to help guide things in a few places.
I think it's awesome. I think I agree with you on that. I saw a desire to serve, but due to my injury, like sitting behind a desk in the military wasn't going to be my thing, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of, very fortunate today, kind of fell into the corporate security consulting role, and met Ray and the company, and we did a lot of great things together. And I think what keeps me coming back is trying to protect people, right? I think in the military, law enforcement, I think that's what drives everyone is you want to do. It's cool, it's fun, but you also you have this inner drive, and you try to protect and give back. And I think doing this role now, I went away for about almost a year. Was a defense contractor for a while. Great, money's great, but it wasn't. It was like the same thing. It was like Groundhog Day almost all the time. Where this is, I have clients calling me throughout the week, and it's something new. Hey, what's going on in Bahrain? What's going on over here? What's going on with this? You have Mexico and the hurricane right now that's heading up the Gulf Coast that ruined my golf plans this weekend in Louisiana. Thanks a lot, Delta. Not Delta Airlines, Delta the hurricane.
The hurricane.
Let me make that clear. So it's, you have, security to me it's, we always talk on the show here, in our minds, there's 3 aspects of it. You have the human side, you have the physical side, and then you have the technical side. And there's always something in there. When I put human side, I kind of put Mother Nature in there too, and how that affects and plays a major role. So, Bryan, I think that's really good points for those listening out there. Sometimes you just kind of getting out there. You went to school to get out there. I thought for sure I was going to go be a government civilian somewhere with a heavy intel background, kind of like yourself. But I didn't want to wear a suit and tie, and I really didn't want to work for the government anymore once I was done with the military. So I think doing what we do is definitely a good thing. So let's kind of jump into workplace violence a little bit. So let's kind of define what it is, right? So Will, you want to go over that definition of workplace violence?
So OSHA, they define it as a violence or the threat of violence against workers. It can occur at or outside the workplace and can range from threats and verbal abuse to physical assault and homicide. Estimated 2 million American workers are victims of workplace violence each year. The number is estimated to be way underreported, and some experts estimate the number to be closer to 8 million.
Which I find absolutely mind-blowing. I actually heard that statistic yesterday, going through like a COVID preparation course, like a certification for COVID for managers and stuff. And the HR representative who was teaching it was talking about workplace violence, and basically it was workers not confronting employees or customers about wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, and like how to where to put an employee to do it. You know, most workers aren't trained in de-escalation, that kind of stuff. So more likely than not, if you have a customer or another employee who doesn't want to wear it, you're going to get in some type of altercation with it. You know, usually it's verbal, sometimes it leads to physical. And he brought up this statistic about OSHA, which I didn't keep stats on workplace violence, so they're the record keeper, and he said the 2 million. And he kind of broke that down, you know, for simple math. If you just do 50 weeks out of the year instead of 52, you're looking at, I can't remember what the number was, but it was like 50,000 or 40,000, basically, workplace violence incidents a week here in the U.S.,
Yeah.
which blows my mind. So,
Yeah.
Bryan, can you talk a little bit about what you do in your organization with workplace violence, and you know, some of the steps you take and how you guys identify it and that kind of stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. So, you know, I think I agree with the idea that this is probably a lot, you know, a lot occurs a lot more often than just the 2 million, because of it, you know, the internet, and we are connected all the time, and what is really not at work anymore when a lot of us are working from home. And two, even when we are in a traditional office environment, you know, we still have a laptop or a phone that comes with us, and the barrier of electronic harassment or threats is a lot lower and a lot easier to kind of break through for somebody to throw off a snapfire remark, and all of a sudden things start to escalate it. So
Internet tough guy.
yeah, you know, it's a keyboard warrior kind of thing.
Yep.
And so the things that I find have worked best is to kind of have a bit of a tiered program, and you know, one is prevention and having a you know, in a corporate environment, a corporate security program that comes out and says, hey, these actions are not okay, and kind of to keep hammering that over and over and over again. You know, I've heard a line like, you know, when you're sick of saying it, they finally heard it. And so, you know, so something
sense.
like that, you know, to try and deter things, but then an awareness of like, hey, we do have a global security program. We are here to help. We're not like this big daunting, like, you know, folks in a movie with, you know, black suit and tie with pistols, you know, in under the jackets and whatnot. You know, most of these are folks who are really more there to honestly kind of talk to. And so how comfortable are you with bringing a problem to the security team, whether it's in person or over email, so that you can get somebody to say, hey, this happened. And the moment that happens, you kind of start getting into where I really specialize more in, which is the threat management teams. And when you do get one of these incidents, you start to process that through a structured assessment, and then also getting it in front of a diverse team of specialties. And that's really the heart behind that threat management team is, you know, you have somebody like myself who does really well in investigating and pulling out information. You have somebody who is, you know, maybe you have somebody who is an actual psychologist, but you have HR representatives, you have your traditional physical security representatives, so that you can all kind of get together and say, hey, is this an issue? Do we have a pattern here? Is it escalating? Is it de-escalating? And then kind of deciding on the next steps there. So that's really the I'd say the framework of what I would consider a good workplace violence, prevention or reaction team.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said in the beginning, right? Have, having a policy. Every company needs to have, a policy, and it's clear and it's upfront for all employees and for everyone to know and to follow. And then you kind of said it, like having those discussions, right? That training, whether it's through
Yep.
like a learning management system, or it's your management constantly beating it over the head, where they're like, I'm sick and tired of saying this, like you said,
Yeah.
But it's that training and those policies, and then where and letting those workers know, hey, where to go, where do they go, where they, someone it doesn't seem right, where they can actually recognize, hey, we're on the verge of something about to happen here. Will isn't acting like himself today. Will's been cussing Jake out quite a bit because Jake didn't read this or that, or whatever the issue and the cause may be. How do employees recognize that, and then how do you avoid or try to diffuse a potentially violent situation? So I think for you and your team, that's probably got to be somewhat of a hard task, because there isn't probably a cookie cutter approach to that. Each incident is probably a little bit individualized and specialized. There could be a framework.
The framework part there is huge, because there is a lot that you look at things at a case by case basis, but as far as an assessment goes, you do really need something to help give a structure as you go through case by case and the steps by steps, because that is important when you start, say you do need to start escalating up to government agencies, like whether it's law enforcement, whether it's prosecutors, those types of things. You need to have something that is consistent, that you can show some work and due diligence has gone in, and that essentially you've thought about this. You aren't winging it.
Yeah.
And for the big thing that I've used is what's called the waiver 21.
I was going to ask you that, so I'm glad you're
Yeah.
jumping into that. So yeah, let's jump into that. So what is waiver 21? What is the threat assessment? I think you kind of outlined it a little bit before, the steps and processes, but if you could kind of, for our listeners out there who have never heard of waiver 21, and kind of do somewhat of I guess a deep dive on what it is, and why you use it, and how you use it.
So basically, when something comes to my level, some sort of threat, real or perceived, has occurred. I'm a bit in the reactive stage, and so basically I can take that information of the threat, and I can start looking into the open source background on an individual. So nothing that somebody hasn't already shared with the rest of the world, and start moving through this assessment. And it's, the technical term is a structured professional judgment tool, and it's basically a little bit of a check the box approach, but it basically hits on are there psychological, is there behavioral, are there historical incidents of violence that have been in an academic sense shown to lead down this pathway of violence. And so you're looking for something like, hey, does the individual that made the threat, do they have a grievance? Is it real or is it perceived? But it doesn't really matter, but because they think it's true. And then do they have a history of, like, if any one of the three of us had an Instagram account and we're showing off a new handgun every other week or something like that, that wouldn't be as a big of a concern as if Joe Schmo, who hasn't touched a firearm in his life, is now all of a sudden putting up racks of rifles in in his
Yeah, those
garage
little
or something like that.
indications, you know.
Yeah. And so you're looking for these behavioral, these historical, and taking into the account the situation, uh, and getting a bit of a good broad picture of who this individual is and what are the things they're going through. Have they had some sort of a catalyst moment that caused them to have additional stressors in their life, and now they kind of have hit a point where they have that grievance, and we're marching down that pathway to violence. And so I just use that and paint that picture a bit to the rest of the professionals in the threat management team. We get the psychologists involved because as good as this tool is, it is meant to be filled out by me. But someone who does not have a doctorate in psychology, but it can be filled out, and it does give the information to this broader team. Like I said, the HR, the psychologist, the general, physical security, and kind of start to create a course of action going forward.
And I'm sure you're trained in it. I know, like Waiver 21, they do some training out there for people who purchase and subscribe to their products. So for those of our listeners listening out there, their website is Waiver, so it's WAVR21.com. And so definitely some good information out there. They have some training events. Looking right now, they have a upcoming training event right now is a threat assessment update, extremism and lone actor terrorism. So actually that just passed, but they do, if you go on their website,
they have a couple more down there. Yeah. And
they have a bunch
and they have been doing they have an online one now. I forget, if you keep going down there, there is an option for an online training, and so you can get good, I think it's 5 or 6 hours of review on how to fill the form out. So like I said, it is meant to be filled out by kind of anyone who has that general background of dealing with kind of violent situations, so that you can all kind of come to the table.
I know this is kind of an unvogue word, but it sounds like you're essentially profiling someone to see if they fit a behavior that is in the past has kind of shown it. I know it's kind of I don't want to pigeonhole it into that profile, but I as an officer, we hated that word because we used to talk profile, racial profile, blah, blah, we criminally profiled people, right, based on their actions, their past, their future, their present, stuff like that. And it just sounds a lot similar. So I don't know if maybe profile is not a proper word, but sounds very similar to what I used to do as a criminal profiler.
I mean, they call it a pathway, right? They call it a pathway for violence. So.
I mean, it's a set of guidelines. It's not like set in stone, but it's kind of like a set of guidelines you use.
I mean, Bryan, like, how much success have you had using this assessment tool?
I think where the actual outcome of violence is still pretty rare. You still take every threat legitimately and you work through it. The biggest success I think you see in something like this is, how can I assist somebody like the physical security team or an executive protection team to really get a sense of the threat. And so, workplace violence, it doesn't just have to be by somebody you work with. It can be a customer, a client. And so
Spouse.
Like it's the
it
OSHA
occurs
definition
on the
says,
workplace or on the campus.
Ad workplace. Yep. And so to be able to get a threat in, put it through this process, and then I can say, hey, Will, you probably don't, you likely do not need additional, bodies on the principal this time around, or you do, and so it's a question of like, do I save you $100,000 or not? And not to put it in a crass like money way, but it is a corporate environment, and so they are looking like, hey, what are you adding to the business? And so it's the success really is, hey, are we gonna overreact? Are we gonna underreact? And hopefully limit the number of times when you are quote unquote overreacting or underreacting, that you are responding appropriately to the situation.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that you always side on the air of caution.
Oh yeah,
With any of this, if people just did a little bit of searching on the internet, they could find out, what Bezos spends on personal security. Mark Zuckerberg, your high-end tech companies, not just tech companies, but your uber wealthy people, your high net worth people, what they spend just on their own protection. And some people are going to be like, oh my gosh, $10 million. Well, you're talking your home security, you're talking every single aspect of security. And security is not cheap. To get the right people and the right tools in there, technology is always changing, which means there's a premium price for that new technology that's out there. If you're using executive protection, there's a price to be paid for that. So again, security is not cheap, and dealing with the CEOs and who have to answer to a board if they're a publicly traded company, it's that sales pitch of why you need X amount of dollars for your security program. And I think Waiver 21 for any organization, like large organization that has a ton of employees, great tool out there to help identify what could be a potential, and I think the thing is you're trying to, you see that flash, that initial like little spark or that little flash, but before it goes boom and bang and you have a major incident, you're trying to catch it before, get ahead of the curve a little bit. So how do you work with your employees to talking about workplace violence and what what signs they should look for, and kind of like that reporting process? Can you talk about that a little bit?
This goes a little bit back to, I think, kind of the human days, which is use everyone that you can as a source to pull information in. And so you try and you are a coalition builder, going around trying to gain input. And so that could mean hey, you are meeting with, even if it's just for coffee, with your the HR teams, and it is meeting with your social media teams, because maybe some threats are coming in online, and technology and a lot of things are changing a lot of how we have to handle that type of stuff. So I can't handle every social media post about the company or the client that comes through. And so that's the first step, is like build that coalition of input, so that you're getting that information in a timely manner, just explaining like, hey, like if it doesn't sit right, I'd rather you send me 100 things that are kind of irrelevant, but catch that one thing that really is important, than miss that one thing and have you think, oh, like, should I send this or not?
So that's better safe than sorry.
Exactly.
It's kind of like the 9/11 commission, right? After 9/11, everyone's like, well, we saw the signs. Some may have reported, but it got stifled here somewhere. And it's hopefully we've learned. We do forget some things, but I think, you mentioned two things, and before I forget about them, you mentioned like cyber, the cyber, the tweets, the social media stuff. So I'd love for you to talk about that for a little bit, and then we can come back, and I'm going to say it before I forget it, and Will or Brian, please remind me, but I'd also love for you to talk about just your average person, right? Whether they're working at, I don't know, it could be a real estate office or a high-end tech company or fast food, like wherever they work, kind of break it down to the average, what I call the average Joe, right? Some of our listeners aren't security experts whatsoever. and they just want to know, like, hey, what are some of the signs I should look for? What, with workplace violence. So if you could talk about cyber and just how you kind of deal with those tweets, threats that come through the cyber portion, and then the average Joe, what things they should look for.
They recognize it. Absolutely. So that's one of kind of my big, I guess, projects, which is a lot of programs that deal with like physical security. Let me rephrase that. A lot of places have a place that deal with physical security, and then they have their cyber or IT house, that takes care of things separately. I don't think this is exactly a brand new idea, but it is something I want to say every time. I don't know how organizations don't bring those two together a lot more. Like I said, as far as, what is the delineation between your workplace and home? And that is all getting blurred by the technology that we carry around with us or that is available to us to use. And so to keep those two parts siloed, I think you open yourself up to trouble. Because yes, it is so easy to have the keyboard warrior who's gonna send out a tweet or send an email, and they are gonna say something that's going to impact the target, and that's an important part of the last part. I think it's the very last question in waiver 21 is what is the organizational impact, or how does the victim feel? Because while as a security professional we may see something and be like, oh, well, that's nothing, like that's, we can dive down the hole of like the whole hunter versus howler in situation in security, but for Joe Schmo, who's just trying to do some data entry and whatnot, or help the social support team, they don't know that, and so all they know is like, I just got a tweet that says we're gonna shoot up your building or something like that, and so the ability to intake all of that noise really, and know how to filter things out. And so that is a use of, what tools do you have to filter things out online? Whether, a big thing, like with an example of Twitter, is the TweetDeck platform. So you can filter through different tweets and start to really hammer down into, Bryan, I'm going to punch you, versus Bryan, I'm going to buy you a cake. You need to be aware of that, and you need to take, beyond just what is, I guess, the traditional workplace violence, but we are dealing with now with surges in kind of electronic crimes, if you will. So you're dealing with phishing, you're dealing with social engineering, and how are companies and individuals handling that, and there's no real division anymore between the physical and cyber side of these things. They all overlap in their concerns,
as they should.
Yeah. And so it's I think that's an important drive to make, and I think there's a lot of ways that we can improve kind of workplace violence programs to incorporate a lot more of this. And then as far as how does Joe Schmo recognize this? A lot of it, if I were to tell anyone, kind of the elevator pitch is like, do you see a deviation from the normal? And, obviously if you're at work with somebody and you sit next to them day in and day out, like I said, I use the example of like putting up a firearm photo on Instagram. Like, do they normally do this, or is this a new thing? Or like, is it also tied to somebody saying like, "Hey, man, I'm going through this messy divorce. I'm gonna start buying lots of guns." Like, is it in of itself a bad thing? No. Is it something to keep an eye on? Like,
Yeah.
from my perspective, yeah. So it's what do you see in that deviation from the norm, and are there stressors going on in that person's life? Because if they are making threats, if they are doing things that are beyond what their normal behavioral pattern is, then yeah, you start having some concerns. And absolutely, every single one of the things that this new behavior could be considered absolutely legal and in of itself not inappropriate. But when combined, and why you get things through that waiver 21 assessment, is to get everything together and paint a good picture as far as what's going on. Yeah. Where has this changed from 6 months ago, and being able to make that assessment from there.
The totality of the circumstances.
Yeah.
Like, great points, right? You look at, I think espionage kind of fits into that little realm too. The same when you're looking at like corporate espionage, you're looking for some of those similar type behaviors,
Yeah.
Are they distancing themselves more than what they used to? Are they going through, whether a financial crisis, a breakup, a divorce, a negative major life event that, and look, if you're going through, I haven't been through a divorce, so I wouldn't know, but that's a major negative life event. You'd expect people to, maybe their work is going to tell off a little bit, or you never know how someone's going to react to something like that. But you look at those events, and then what are they? Social media is a great tool. What you put out there, a lot of people, for our average Joes who are listening, hey, when you put it out there, it's out there. You're not getting that back. Even if you think you've deleted it, it's still out there somewhere. So I think the military, they always told us, hey, never fire off an emotional email, right? We'll do the same thing with social media. I mean, heck, we don't talk politics here, but it is political season, right? And you're going to see people get passionate about what they believe one way or the other. Again, refrain if you can, from getting in a heated argument. Again, you're not going to change anyone's, in my opinion, you're not changing anyone's political view over social media. But you're looking for those tells, those signs that you're looking for. I think another thing you said interesting, Bryan, when you're talking about the tool and how you use it, is the victim. For guys like you and I, and Will here, I always have to put my bias in check of what I'm comfortable with, And so what I always try to do is like, all right, if my wife was there, or if my kids were there, how would I feel differently than if I was there?
Yep.
I don't mind a little bit of violence, right? Like, I'm accustomed to it. I was trained in it.
Yeah.
But I don't want my wife or my kids around that whatsoever, and I don't want them feeling threatened in any shape, way, or form. And so I think as security experts, we always got to realize what our own biases are and put that to the side. And I think that was a great point of, what's the victim? What are they feeling? How threatened do they feel? If it's big enough for them to report it or have a conversation about it, they should at least get the time, to at least hear them out and do an investigation, based on your experience and expertise and the situation. So some really great points, Bryan.
Almost daily, I had someone threatening to kill me. So yeah.
Well, as a cop,
always a good day,
Yeah.
But glad we could finally meet, first in person.
So I do have a question. I don't know how much remote you guys do with your company, but have you found like an uptick in maybe domestic violence type incidences? Because I know I've read a lot that they say they have, but I don't know any firsthand accounts, I guess you could say. So,
is that something you guys track? Because it's almost a personal thing.
Yeah,
at home.
I mean, it
is.
But there's that fuzzy line right now with everybody working remotely. So maybe I guess that's a better question. Is that something you look out for?
It is something that we would look out for, because any type of threat to an employee is still a threat, whether it's a partner or a coworker or a client or a customer. So it is important to keep track of that. And when I see the larger national numbers and the reports, uh, I've got nothing to refute that. And so I think that's the put in our terms, like, the battlefield has changed a bit.
Yeah.
We are dealing with a lot of new things, like not just like what I was talking about as far as the cybersecurity side of things, like how are we protecting personal information, how are we handling threats that come in from a social media email or whatnot, but people are working from home and they're using the Internet of Things and any number of things. Are those creating vulnerabilities to your home? Are you broadcasting, by accident, your IP address, which is giving away, within 5 miles of where you live? And so it's there's a lot of things changing. I think it's a good thing that we're adapting to it, and recognizing these issues, because this is the new norm. I don't know when, how many companies are going to go back to, the cubicle style office place anymore, and we're still going to need all these workers. So where are they going to work? Well, we're probably going to have them at home, and so I think that really makes the awareness part much harder, because how many people are really going to pay attention to, if I get my ugly mug on a video and say, hey guys, like, I want to talk to you about this wonderful topic, this workplace violence, as they're sitting in their pajamas and everything at home with a kid screaming in the background.
With a cup of coffee,
but it is still
with a floral accent in it.
Yeah. It is, I think that's probably going to be the biggest challenge moving forward, which is, how do we get that awareness and let people know, like, hey, we are here. We're still, if a company's still hiring, got new people coming in, they don't know that, the security programs exist, and that, we're here to help.
Great points. I mean, I think whatever this new normal is going to be, I deal with a lot of manufacturing companies, and that's at their headquarters. It's, when do we bring everyone back? I think they're operating at like 25% capacity at their office buildings, not the manufacturing plants, but the actual office buildings. And so it's that discussion, of, do we bring everyone back? When do we bring them back? How do we bring them back? And then the use of technology. And I think whenever you have an event like COVID that's happened, right? It's taken the world and just kind of flipped it upside down on its head. But we're evolving, and animals evolve and humans evolve, and hopefully we're using this wonderful technology that we're blessed to have this day and age to evolve. And I think it's the companies that you're seeing, a lot of these tech companies kind of spearhead that evolution of working from home. And then, like you said, it's those cyber threats that are out there, with home networks, home security. For me, if I was an IT guy right now, I'd probably be pulling my head out if I worked for a major tech company, where most of the employees are working from home. And it's like, how am I going to protect my servers, right? So everything, whether it's physical and cyber, outside in, keep that threat as far out. But now someone at their home network, well, who's paying for that network?
They're not
who's paying for that security program? Are they using VPNs? Are they using, all the malware and spyware and everything else, those protections that they should have? And then, again, they have access to those servers, those company servers where there's intellectual property and other stuff, secure stuff on there, playing that cat and mouse game with the bad guy. So interesting times. And I think as a country, in my opinion, I think we're doing a pretty good job evolving with it. There's going to be hiccups, there's going to be bumps in the roads, and I'm sure you see them working in the tech industry like you do. Probably much more so on a daily basis. But Yeah, I think as long as we keep evolving the right way, there's pros and cons with it all. So, one thing I wanted to ask you, Bryan, we mentioned this a little bit in the beginning of that transition out of the military, and we kind of briefly spoke about it in the beginning of this topic. But, let's say, me, I'm getting out of the military, or I've been doing corporate security for a little bit. What recommendations do you give to someone it doesn't just have to be in the military, but who wants to get in the field that you do, threat assessments and doing it at a corporate level, and then not just at a corporate level, but for like a tech firm, like what, looking back on your career and what you did and then what you're doing now, what tips and advice would you give to people out there?
Yeah. I think that's a great question, just because I don't know if there's no clear-cut way, and I think that's what's great about getting into this field, is that if you want to deal with this kind of threat management stuff, those teams are built out of a number of professions. So you could be very well versed in physical security or IT or HR, or you could have an intel kind of investigations type background like we do. And so the starting point, I think, can come from any number of areas. The next steps are, if you do really think like, oh man, this protective intelligence or threat management path is where I want to go down. I think a great place to start is the ATAP, the Association of Threat Assessment Professionals, I believe is the group. They have a bunch of reading materials. They have a certification path that you can take, and they are. I don't want to dunk on them, some of the professional groups out there in security, but they are one of the better values I've seen as far as an organization that you're paying your dues, but the local chapters are actually having constructive meetings, and you're learning and you're doing case studies, and you're practicing the craft. And so, yeah, ATAP I think is a great place to start, just to kind of start learning and networking. The other group is it's called ARIP, the Association of. I'm blanking now. It's AIRIP. It's the Risk Intelligence Professionals Group, but they really help as far as coming at it from an intelligence perspective in corporate security. So they are another wonderful group that has, I find, like the business dues, that you have to pay for it, as far are worth it, especially in this career. Both of those groups will help you get some reading lists together, a certification process going, and get you networked with the right folks.
So both those offer a certification. So if someone doesn't have, if they're starting from scratch, those two will definitely help.
Yeah. So I know Arup is working on theirs as far as kind of making it official, and ATAP has, I believe, they're the Certified Threat Manager.
Okay.
The CTM, and so that is a process. Like, if you don't have kind of professional background in intelligence or investigations or psychology, things like that, that is a place that you can start, and you can start making your way kind of into the profession. And then it comes to a curious mind. You need to be ready to learn a whole bunch of different stuff. Like I said, I think cybersecurity is becoming a lot bigger part of all of this, and so I'm even having to learn, like, I know what phishing is and whatnot, but like, how are they actually executing that? How are they putting together a malware to actually infiltrate somebody's network and trying to pull credentials, or things like that. So be curious, always be ready to learn. If I were to recommend one book, and I did pull it here just because I do think pretty highly of it, is the Threat Assessment and Management Strategies, Identifying the Howlers and Hunters, by Calhoun and Weston. Just a great place to start kind of reading and putting things into perspective, and how to start thinking in a structured method. Waiver 21 isn't the only one. It is really more targeted towards violence in a workplace, but there are structured method, judgment tools, for sexual assault or domestic violence, or for youth and something like that. So there are plenty of, as you start to specialize, there's a lot of ways to have that structured method that I think are really worthwhile in that read. And excuse me, and that it gives you that perspective on the hunter versus howler, which is, if somebody does say something and makes a statement, I immediately have a little bit less concern, because then I know I can get eyes on that person.
Yeah.
But then, the concern on the physical security side is, and this is something I don't bring up to the actual principal or whatnot, but my concern is the one that you don't hear from, because those are the ones that are being very strategic about it, and it's not an impulsive thing.
Yeah. That's the scary part, it's that one. I think the FBI says it really good. Like, the terrorists, they just have to get it right one time, You look at everything that built up to 9/11, and even after 9/11, with the FBI, the Joint Terrorism Task Force, and all the other law enforcement agencies, not just here nationally, but globally, like trying to prevent it. All the money, mines, assets, everything going into that, they're trying to prevent that one attack, and, if you miss that one, it's life-changing for those victims. So, Bryan, man, I've really, really enjoyed this conversation today. I wish we could keep it going and going and going. One thing I do want to talk about, you helped found an organization called Team Push-Up.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that as we start wrapping this up?
Yeah. So Team Push-Up was, I had been around kind of the veteran charity scene for a bit, and the thing that I felt was missing was, a lot of these larger organizations did start to develop local chapters, but it felt like it was an emphasis on marketing or a donation collection, and for me, the reason why I started getting them was I needed that connection back. Like he had said, when you get out, it is life changing. It is a personality shift. We could. There are definitely situations where, folks aren't getting the right kind of treatment for some, whether it's a traumatic brain injury or psychological issues. The thing that hit for me was I just lost my best friends, the group of people that I wanted to hang out with, and even when it was dirty National Guard days, I wanted there was nothing that I looked forward more to than doing those drills, and so all of a sudden that was gone, and I was very disconnected from things, and so I missed that community. And somebody kind of put it in a pretty good phrase, which is you miss that social support group. And so the purpose of what I was, I am far from an entrepreneur, but basically I was well, if no one else is going to do it, let me give this a shot. And so I started Team Push-Up really with the goal of let me do something small that I can, in one area at least to start, get veterans and allies together so that we can just start a bond again. obviously I want veterans in there because, at least in my experience, like that's what I miss the most. Let me get some fellow veterans together, but also let me get, friends and friends of friends who are supportive and saw kind of what I had gone through and been like, hey, like, let's not have that happen too much more. And so, we would throw just kind of events where we could get folks together. And so, in LA, you have a wealth of opportunities. So, you could go to a board game restaurant and bar. You could go to, a video game hookah bar. Like, there's all this kind of interesting things that you're just, it's interesting. You're getting people pulled together. They're engaging in something, and you're building those bonds up. And, it's with, COVID, we're kind of figuring out an adjustment, because what I really needed was that, I needed that physical contact with folks, and not to say that you can't do it online, but for me it was like, just being able to look somebody in the face and not through the dead eyes of a video camera. Sorry, video cameras.
It's hard to build that camaraderie.
Yeah,
it's that human touch.
So and so that was and is really the purpose of the organization, and we just got to kind of figure out the essentially our next play on that. And so really in the meantime, I kind of run out the standard lines of like, hey, just keep in touch with folks. Whether it's Facebook or WhatsApp or Signal or Zoom, like whatever, just stay in touch with folks. If you're hurting, it's okay to hurt. Just reach out to folks. Don't let kind of the dark stuff take over, and find ways to connect. And it may be video games, it may be, like I said, a Signal chat or something like that. But just keep in touch with folks, because I think we're a little sick and tired of kind of keep losing folks. So.
Yeah, no, what a great organization. What a great thing. I was thinking like push-ups, right? Like actually doing push-ups, but I think it's the opposite of like pushing up your buttons,
pushing
right?
each other up. Yeah,
pushing each other up.
There's a lot of play on words in that, and that's why I was really excited. And so, the main logo, it's got like a little D-pad, with the up on it. So there's a lot of different ways. There's pushing each other up. There's trying to stay active. There's trying to stay in touch with folks. And so if the way I see is, I don't care if it's through us or some other group or whatever, like just keep that connection, keep staying healthy and whatnot.
That's awesome, man. Again, it's been great having you on. I've really enjoyed this. So, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Will, do you got anything?
Yeah, I want to say thanks to Bryan. It was a great conversation. We really appreciate you coming on. Don't forget, everybody, you can check us out on YouTube at our channel, youtube.com. Just search The Coffee Squad. Please comment, subscribe, let us know what we're doing. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. That's kind of important for our analytics and stuff. Also, you can listen to subscribe at the coffeesquadpodcast.com, or you can go to your favorite podcast platform and just search Security Matters with The Coffee Squad, and we'll pop up. We're on like 16 of them now, so good chances that your favorite podcast platform, we're on it. If we're not, let us know and I'll try to get us on it. Also, give us a like and follow on Facebook at Coffee Squad Podcast, or Instagram at coffee_squad_podcast. Leave comments, share with your buddies, and next week we're having a special guest talk cybersecurity, so it'll be another good conversation. And Bryan, thanks again. Hope we didn't get you up too early there on the West Coast. So.
I appreciate you guys having me on, and this is great. And look forward to hearing the cybersecurity episode.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks, man.
Talk to you guys next week.